Welcome to another episode of Prepper Talk Radio with Scott, Shane, and Paris, each broadcasting from our remote locations all across the United States. Thanks for being here, guys. And most importantly, thank you guys listening for being involved in Prepper Talk Radio. Prepping is as a lot of people think of prepping is like, oh crap, that's a weird thing. Only the conspiracy theorist guys prep. But we're finding a huge trend of more and more people coming in to be prepper minded.
Well, if we look back at our grandparents, right? My grandparents, I thought they were pretty weird, right? You know, I'm guessing maybe all you guys, maybe not you, Scott, but my grandparents seem pretty weird. But now that I look back, they were just pretty normal. Because I'm a grandparent now, and I can relate now, so I can see how they wanted to keep the old ways. They wanted to stay the way they were. They wanted us to be have the experiences they had, right? And that's what I want for my kids. So I know exactly what you're talking about.
Well, it's funny because like my grandparents, my mom's side is completely different than my dad's side. Two totally different dynamics on how they raise kids, how they do things. But yet one thing was constant with both: big gardens, year supply of food and other surplus items that they could need. You know, I didn't know this until recently, but my mom's side, my grandpa built a bunker in this house.
Oh, wow.
I always thought that was just the storage room. It was really weird, but that's where they kept everything. All their food storage, everything. It was a fully enclosed concrete bunker with an air filtration system that connected to the garage. And so you could get air in and out through the garage. He was worried about nuclear fallout. And I was like, I never knew that's what that was. I just thought it was a storage room, and it was.
Well, he built it properly. Then nobody suspected, right?
And you could actually close. I guess there's like a double locking door system where you lock the outer door, then lock the inner door. And I didn't know that either door mattered. Like, I mean, I was probably 12 when they sold that house.
Yeah, we're not observant either when we're young. So
yeah, now that I'm older, I'd have paid more attention to it because it's in my mind. But you know, it's funny because I always thought that was the norm, because then my parents went on big garden, year supply of food, almost always, right? And then resources, soap, cleaners, extra socks, extra things that we would need. Mm-hmm. Our home had a storehouse in it, not just a storage room, not just a pantry, right? It was a storehouse. And so I've always kept that on to some degree. Now it's a lot better than it was, but it's funny because this is starting to be the norm for a small group of people, and that group is growing.
I met with a lawyer today to have a networking opportunity for estate planning and other things in my financial business. And we literally got onto the topic of prepping, and he was like, I don't consider myself a prepper. I'm like, neither do I, really. Mm-hmm. Neither do I sent him our podcast link, and I said, neither do we. But that's kind of the word we use to kind of keep the search engine going, and the keywords to keep the traffic headed our direction. But it's just really, it's called life. It's called self-reliance. It's called staying ahead of the curve and being somebody that can be relied upon, not only by yourself but by others. And so it was really cool because I think he was actually in an area. I won't disclose the area. He was in an area buying farm equipment that was not grid dependent. So that if the grid goes down, he have stuff for his horses to pull and plow the ground and keep things going. I thought that was pretty cool. Brilliant. So he's definitely preparing and being prepared and prepared. So that was a cool conversation that we had. So
that leads right into what we want to talk about today, which is failing often, failing early now, right? Instead of post SHTF. Mm-hmm. It's so often we see this, and it was actually just posted in our group. If you guys aren't members of our Facebook and our YouTube channels, go to Prepper Talk Radio on Facebook and then click on the link to join the group, Emergency Prep and Self-Reliance. And then also make sure you go to YouTube, search us up, Prepper Talk Radio, and follow us there, like, subscribe, turn on notifications because we go live every Wednesday. But this comment popped into our group just, I think, 3 days ago. And it's better to have it now than 5 minutes after the disaster.
Mm.
You know, and then Shane replied, or even 5 seconds or 1 second.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah. And that got me onto this topic of failing. It's like, so many people are afraid to try something new because they're not going to be good at it at first. And
Mhm.
Jordan Peterson, as Paris would like to probably point out, talks
Mhm.
about that a lot. It's like, you have to be bad at first.
Yep.
Mhm.
That's how you learn. You can't just expect, hey, I'm going to go try making a cabinet in your first go around, having it be perfect. Your first go around, you're going to measure once, cut twice, 3 times, 5 times, measure 10 more times, and you'll still have the wrong size piece.
Yep.
Or you'll realize it's not square and you can't use that piece.
And I think that's really the lesson that, I want my kids to learn is that, my daughter, at the time she was 8, we were watching the Olympics or something, and she had been ice skating, previously. And then she watches this girl on TV in the Olympics, and she just kind of drops her head and frowns. She's better than me. Well, Allie, you've been ice skating 2 or 3 times.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, absolutely. That attitude that I think maybe a lot of the youth have nowadays. I won't label them, but
Well, even a lot of adults.
yeah, exactly. And
That's a
the
good
thing is,
point.
we were talking in the pre-conversation is, there really isn't such thing as failure until you stop trying, right?
Yeah.
If you stop trying, then you've failed.
Everything up until that is educational.
Mm-hmm.
And I consider the word fail, FAIL, an acronym. And it's kind of a fun acronym that I've learned over the years. It's called First Attempt in Learning.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And FAIL, First Attempt in Learning. And so that's really the best way to think about it, so that you take the failure as not as a defeat, but you take it as that learning process. And then you it's basically what Thomas Edison said. I didn't find 10,000 ways not to build.
Mm-hmm.
He said, I didn't fail 10,000 times before I found 10,000 ways not to build the light bulb until I found the one that did. And that's the same thing with our preps. How many times did I buy the wrong food storage before I realized that it wasn't the right one? Or how many times have I tried to do something growing, like, for example, my own garden? How many times have I tried to grow certain things in my garden only to have them die year after year after year, and finally get to the point where I'm like, I finally grew something that is edible, And it took those failures to do it.
That's exactly it. Like, how many times did you fail? You probably can't count them. Just like I can't count how many times I failed in my garden.
I can, because I haven't stopped. I haven't quit,
Right.
So, yeah, but yeah, I know what you mean.
It's like you make a mistake year after year, but you get better and better. And the funny thing is with gardening is, okay, say you've been gardening for 20 years. That sounds like a long time, but you've only gardened 20 times. That's not very many. Right.
Really
So the more times you try, the more seasoned and skilled you'll become, the better equipped you'll be to solve problems in the future. Gardening is just one of the different things. Cleaning and maintaining tools, what be they pews or a drill or whatever it is, wrenches, saws. Like, you have to take care and maintain those things for them to last.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't, that's a failure point, and you realize you just wasted all that money on a tool that you didn't care for, and now it's broken.
Mm-hmm.
You leave it out in the storm and it's not designed to take that kind of punishment. Every skill set requires time invested to become a skill set. Until then, it's a failure set.
And there's really no way to shortcut that either.
Yeah.
Let me take that back. There are ways to shortcut it. Go to the Matrix and download some videos and start that process and learn some mistakes that other people have made.
Yeah.
Right.
And we'll call them mistakes, not failures, right? We all make mistakes, and then we improve our process and try again until we get things perfect, which will never happen. But
I think we've talked about the process, failing and thinking that you're not capable or you're not able to just nail it the first time. That can be a little bit of a slam or hit to the ego and to your pride. And ego, I'm reading this. I just finished a really good book by Ryan Holiday called Ego is the Enemy. And it's just a fantastic book if you want to really understand some of the issues we have around our own pride and how that pride goeth before the fall is a real thing, by the way. And so just learning that, it's okay to make those mistakes because you're learning in that process, and that's humility. And then being humble enough to say, you know what? I tried it. I gave it my best shot, and I need help from somebody who does it better. And so that's one of the things that's great about our Facebook group and about being in the industry, so to speak. Now that we're in it, we're meeting a lot of really good people that are genuine experts. At least I would consider them experts in their field. That I can say, you know what, help me shorten my learning curve. In a particular area. And like, I'm just really happy that I found some people that are in skill sets that I want to learn, that I'm trying to learn. I go and I learn from these experts. They shorten my learning curve, and then I go try it myself. And then I go back to them and I say, okay, this is where I messed up, or this is what I did. You know, it's like a return and report kind of a thing, which is a scriptural doctrinal principle. And so, you know, I say, okay, I went and do it. I come back and say, this is what I did. What can I do better? And then they're like, okay, this is where you tweak it. This is where you make it better. Oh, you know, many times they're like, oh, you did a fantastic job. I would probably only do this or that or the other differently. And then you're like, okay, sweet. I finally got it down. And your learning curve is like half of that, you know? So getting a mentor is critical in anything in life, especially, or a coach, especially in prepping and anything in life.
Well, it's funny because like we have all these guests on, and it fits right in line with what you're saying. They're far beyond where we are in that section of things, right? We're the jack of all trade preppers. We're learning a ton of different things and getting better over time, but we fail at every single one of those. And these guys have failed 1,000, 2,000, 4,000, 10,000, right? Like the light bulb times more than us. And so they have a lot more they can teach. And that's why it's so important. Like everyone listening, go to all the events you can go to for preparedness, for homesteading, for canning, for cooking, for alternative methods, you know, for herbology, for medicinal, real true medicine, which comes from nature, right? Things that will heal.
First aid.
Go to everything you can go to the first aid, go to the shooting range, go take courses. It's funny because I got interested in a group a long time ago. I'm not going to say who they were, but I got interested in this group and I was like, wow, this is kind of cool. And they do all these training days. And I'm like, man, I'd love to go to one of the training days. Well, I went to one of their training days and I was so disappointed because it was everybody lining up and firing. And nobody was actually teaching skills. And they called that a training day. I call that a wasting day. You're wasting time, money, ammunition, your gas, like all those things. It's wasted. That won't build a skill by just going to the gun range with a whole bunch of people and everybody firing at once.
Yeah, on that same note, I knew a professional golfer once, and he had told me at one point that when he went to the range to hit balls to practice, that every single swing had purpose.
Yep.
It was not like, okay, when you or I go there, we swing and that shanked. You know, he would learn something from every single swing. So just like you're saying, Scott, is when you go to the range, yes, that's a lot of time. And every round, you know, shooting 9mm, that's 35, 40 cents a bullet, right? That's very valuable resources. So it makes a lot of sense for me to go pay a couple $100 to someone who knows what they're doing, take a weekend and shoot a couple 100 rounds and get as much out of that, even though I've been averse to that for quite a while. Like I can learn this on my own, you know, and that's true. You probably can. It probably take a lot longer and cost more. But I think we're to the point where we don't have much time for that. You know, we need to shorten those cycles as much as possible and get as much experience and like you say, fail as often as we can now before it really becomes critical that when we shouldn't fail, right?
Fail as quickly as you can, guys. Like get failing now, because now it's still like it's all dry run right now. You know, up until last week, all the people in Northern California, you know, in the Tahoe areas and all those people were like, it's not going to be that bad. Things aren't going to, like, I don't have to worry about being locked in my house for a week with running out of food. But now it's like
hundreds of inches of snow.
What's that?
Hundreds of inches of snow.
Hundreds of inches. Yeah. And I've got a good friend that lives in Northern California and they got 28 inches of snow in 1.5 days at his house. And he's like, we were lucky. We only got 28 inches of snow.
Wow.
And he's got food. He's got resources. He's got propane stoves. He's got everything he needs to get through it because they had power outages too. Like there are so many things going on up there. You know, also look at Ohio, you know, in East Palestine, when something happens like that, you don't want to be hoping you can hurry and get some water stored. You want to have water stored already because there's no drinkable water there.
Yep.
You know, look at Flint, Michigan. How long has it been that they've had real good water? They
Still,
were out for years.
decades.
Still, in some areas isn't that great.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got to take some thought into what you're doing now and start doing things now so that when crap goes sideways, be it huge like what happened in California, what's happening in East Palestine, what's happening in Flint, Michigan. Like when the hurricane gets here, it's too late to go out and get groceries and water, right?
You get caught in the mob.
Make the work happen now so you don't have to worry about that.
Mm-hmm.
It's like when we had COVID all over the place, everyone's running out in Utah to get toilet paper. And that was the funniest thing to me. Like there were literally shelves emptied of other food and everything else, but you didn't hear about the food running out. You heard about the toilet paper running out. And the whole world's like, what is wrong with Utah? Everyone's running out of toilet paper? And some weirdo filled his entire storage unit full of toilet paper and tried to start selling it for like $60 to $80 a pack.
Yeah, they ended up sitting on a lot of spare TP.
Well, he ended up having to give it all away and had a lawsuit because he was
scalping or whatever.
Yeah, he was. I can't remember the name of it, but he was breaking the law. You can't do that during a crisis.
That wasn't just Utah. That was in California too, because I was there. They were flying off the shelves, and I was like, I don't care. I got a whole garage. I got a whole shelf in my garage full of stuff. I probably rotate at least 90 days worth of toilet paper in my house, so I'm good. Like,
yeah, and that's one of those things that does take up more room. So it's like, hey, have a backup solution.
Well, I don't know if you've seen those. Like my son bought a bidet at Walmart for like 30 or $40, and he installed it. I was like, bro, I need to get that because that's a perfect way to avoid some of this toilet paper stuff.
Yeah,
you know,
we did that as well. Yeah, I was thinking when I was prepping for this, it came, I guess, a little bit of inspiration, whatever you want to call it. The key to success is failure. Fail at least at first, right? The key to success is failure at first. And, I had a bunch of examples. I don't know if you want to get into some examples.
Sure.
What I was thinking, the first thing, you see, take, for example, doing a hand drill, a fire, creating fire with a hand drill.
Okay.
If you ever want to learn failure, try and make a fire with a hand drill. It's very specific. It takes a lot of practice. It can be very painful. If you want to learn, fire making, this is easy. Fire making is easy. You get a lighter out, right? But try and do it without a lighter. Try and do it without all the conventional ways, and try and do it with a hand drill. Go out and find the drill. Go out and find the wood that you need. Go out and find your tinder and such. That is a lot harder than you might think it is.
Yeah.
So those types of things where you think you don't know because you haven't tried it. Just like going to the range. Oh yeah, I can fire. I shoot. I did this a long time ago. And then you step up in this critical time and you can't hit your target.
Yeah.
Like you say, fail now.
Well, there's an old saying that you default to your basic level of training, or your the highest level of training that you had. So if your highest level of training is never done it before, then your default.
I've watched it on YouTube. I know how to do it because I watched it on YouTube, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. There's that false sense of I can accomplish, I can do this. How many people will say I can start a fire, but have never started a fire? But they've seen it on Survivor enough times. Like, I know how to do this. It is really not that easy to go out in the wild and try and find just the right tinder that's going to catch a spark from your flint and steel, from your char cloth, or your striker, your ferro rod or whatever.
Even when you have a lighter. Even when you have one of those scriptos with a long thing that you can put into the thing, sometimes it's like, man, why is this not lighting?
Yeah, unless you bring some newspaper with you or something like that, right? If you're trying to find it, that's just a simple example. There's so many different examples we can talk about, but something I've learned, is how to make a fire in my wood stove. I thought, okay, this is easy enough, but it's really, and it wasn't a very long learning curve, but I've become quite adept at keeping a fire going in my wood stove. And it's not as easy as you might, just put wood in there. No, it doesn't work quite that way. You got to know how to adjust the airflow, how to stack the wood, keep it burning, and watch the temperature. And it's more complicated than just putting some sticks on top of themselves, throw them in there to heat up, especially when it's a critical and it's, temperature is very low. That's just another simple example.
I've been on campouts where we didn't have fire because we couldn't
get it going.
Tinder. Yeah. We couldn't find good tinder. Everything was wet. Mm-hmm. And so we're like, you know what? We'll just be cold. We're not going to cook our food. We're just going to eat. It doesn't have to be cooked. We'll eat stuff that doesn't have to be cooked. We had to wait until the next night to be able to do a fire because everything had to be dried out for a day. And it was like, that can happen to anyone, anytime. So having some tinder, having something that can start a fire, because just holding a Bic lighter against a piece of wood long enough, it will light. But that's a long time, and that's all your fuel, right? You've got to dehydrate that area. You've got to let the humidity leave.
And on the other end of starting a fire, how long can you keep a fire going? Because that's a skill too. There's a lot of people that I've been on campouts with some younger, with our church with some younger men, and they're like, just throw a big old log on there. You get too many logs and you snuff it out.
Smother it, yeah.
Yeah, you smother it. So it's a skill set to start it, and then it's a skill set to keep it going too. So that's something to think about as well.
And relying on the Boy Scout juice, right?
Yeah,
everybody just pours lighter fluid on everything. Oh, we'll just douse it in lighter fluid. 5 seconds later, the whole thing's burned out and nothing's stayed, right?
Yeah.
I love this quote by Robert F. Kennedy. Only those who dare to fail greatly, right, can ever achieve greatly. So if you really want to knock anything out of the park, this applies to prepping, this applies to life. If you want to be good at anything, you have to have that splendor in failure. You've got to have that long, hard road. There's a news thing I heard recently. There's a marathon runner that did a full marathon in under 2 hours.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I saw that.
Scientists said that wouldn't happen until I think
it never happened.
2075.
Yeah.
And this guy did it in 2 hours. And do you know what he said? When they're like, how did you do it? Discipline. No one is willing to discipline themselves enough to accomplish things like this. But he goes, but I am.
So David Goggins, he is.
Right? he crushed it. And he's the world's best marathoner, has been for a long time. But it was just so profound to hear that. I'm like, how often do we not even attempt something because of fear of failure or lack of discipline? We'll say we're going to do it, and then we don't do it.
Yeah. And here's another aspect, and I know Paris, you'll be totally on board with this. Financially, how many times do we bounce checks? How many times do we just not watch in the budget and checks get returned? And those are little failures that hopefully will give you some inspiration to make that change and do better.
Yeah. I just love, like, I've failed in buying some of the wrong stuff, but I've also learned a lot of valuable lessons in it.
And those are small mistakes, right? We want to make those little mistakes. The little mistakes, they're not that painful. I mean, they might be in the short run, but
like, for example, have you used any of your long-term food storage? Have you reconstituted or rehydrated some of those foods?
I haven't.
I have. I've used tons of it. And I've got a good friend that makes fun of me for that. He's like, that's a waste of money. You need to save that until the end. I'm like, if I don't know how to cook it or prepare it, and I can't get it right for my family, and they don't want to eat it, right, in the first few days of a disaster, after a certain time, everyone's going to be willing to eat whatever they can get.
Yeah, exactly.
But being able to reconstitute it and not waste, that's huge. Right? Those blocks, what are they called? The block of food from the Navy or the Coast Guard
rations.
Rations.
Right? Those blocks.
Yep.
I've eaten a whole block. I've used it over 3 days, and my digestive system hated me for it. Right. But I know what it's going to be like if I have to again. And a lot of people, like, it did plug me up for a bit, and it was painful, but it's like, it's survival. Being willing to try those things and fail at those things makes me feel like I can accomplish better things later. But if we completely ignore practice, if we completely ignore educating ourselves and learning things, we're going to fail at the most critical time when it's life and death, as opposed to right now when it's, oh, I just wasted $5.
And there are some things that obviously you can take a back seat. You know, I don't think you need to be that adept at starting a fire if you have the right supplies and you've done a little bit before. I didn't mean to put too much emphasis on that in particular, but you know, it depends on, you know, what your plans are. If you're going to bug out, then you darn well better know how to make a fire out of whatever you can find, right? But and if you're in an urban area and you need to defend yourself, you darn well better know how to shoot a gun, and shoot a gun when your heart is pounding, right? And when your mind is not entirely clear. So go get that experience now. You know, that's and like
or defend yourself against somebody who's got a bat or a crowbar or something coming after you, a knife. You know, because you might have a gun and you're prepared and you're ready, but the guy coming after you, not everything has to be fatal. Not everything has to be, you know, pew pew. You know, if you can stop a threat before you have to do that, because the big thing for me is that if I shoot so much, I could run out of bullets if it's depending on the scenario, and I don't want to do that. So those bullets can be sacred. Like I want to use it for hunting or getting food, you know, potentially. So if I don't want to just go blowing up some dude who's coming after me, if I can take care of him with with my nunchuck skills or my or my bow staff skills, you know. So I mean, there's multiple ways. Like if you have a staff that's really good for hiking and helping you through long walks, so but then that staff could double as a weapon. So learn those skills, learn both of those skills. And I think, you know, speaking of, you know, some of the things we've talked about before is what is your physical fitness? You know, have you got to the point where you could, if you were needed to, could you lift a beam off of your kid that in the earthquake that just happened, that your house collapsed and your kid's trapped? Could you walk, you know, 3 or 4 miles to the nearest safe place because you have the physicality to do it? Or have you lived a life such that you're not going to be able to do that without having to take a break every 100 feet or 200 feet, you know?
Yeah. Do you get winded walking out to the mailbox? Key indicator.
Yeah.
That's a huge key indicator.
Up the stairs.
Yeah. There have been times in my life where I'm less capable than other times. Right now is one of those because I got injured and now I'm going through physical therapy to try to fix things. And it's like, I can't do everything I could do 3 weeks ago, you know, but this week I can do more than what I could do last week. Right. And it's the same in prepping. Like, I knock out a week at a time or a day at a time or a meal at a time, get something done now. And it goes back to what Shane was saying earlier. And I found the quote. It's by Chris Bradford. It says, "There is no failure except in no longer trying."
Nice.
Yeah, there's quite a few different versions of that.
Every little thing you do in prep improves your odds, improves your skills, improves your knowledge, and improves your understanding, even when you're failing doing it.
Here's another aspect I was thinking of as well. If we don't have our eyes open, if we're not watching, if we're not, you know, awake, sometimes we don't notice that failure. We don't know when we failed, or have, and maybe I'm being a little critical that way, in that doing something not entirely right, it may not be considered failure, but it can be done a better way, right? Where we think we know it all, right? But we've limited ourselves. We've stopped learning. We've stopped saying, okay, I've learned enough about this. And I remember hearing a scientist say, what we don't know, we don't know what we don't know, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And unless we continue that education process and learning and opening, then we may not know when we failed. And it also, another aspect of that is seeing failures around us, failures in the system that we can avoid personally. And I think those are all over the place, and I think we're going to get into that a lot in the next segment too, right? But just seeing the failures that are happening in our government, in society, and acknowledging those in our own lives and making those corrections as well. I think that's a big part of failure, which does not exist until you stop trying.
Well, and it also goes to, like, every time you try, every time you get up, you're also creating resilience and strength of mind in you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, I think, one of the most important things. Wherever you stand in the world of, I'm trying to be better prepared for myself and for my family, and for whatever your reason is, whatever your why is, like everything you do, whether it's a failure or not, is going to create strength of mind. Building a plan for a disaster and then having that disaster happen, even if your plan doesn't work, you're better off because you know what I'm going to do, what you're going to do.
Because you have a plan.
Yeah.
It's resilience, definitely building resilience.
Even if your plan sucks, it's better than having no plan.
Exactly.
No, that's true.
Yeah. I'd rather be in those scenarios. I'd rather be partly great than entirely useless.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, and also failing over and over again, kind of numbs you to failure as well. I mean, like being, say you're a door-to-door salesman or like a missionary, you're knocking doors, everybody's turning you away. You eventually get numb to it. And at first you're like, I don't want to do this. This sucks. I hate this. But you get to the point where like, okay, I did that wrong. Let's try it another way. And it becomes natural. It becomes a habit. It becomes part of you to say, okay, I couldn't figure out how to start this right. Let's try something else. Instead of being discouraged, you're more encouraged to say, hey, let's try something else. I'm excited to try this a different way, rather than saying, okay, I'm not trying that again because I sucked at it. And it made me feel bad.
There's something amazing about inspiration, revelation. You might get creative enough that you find a whole new way of doing something. For example, one of my ancestors literally invented, if you will, mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. They were on a boat in the I don't know where, somewhere in the like Hawaii or the whatever they are, the islands. Pacific. They were out in a boat, and he was they capsized in a storm. Everybody washed ashore. They pulled this guy out of the water. They're like, he's not breathing. We don't know what to do. And he literally got this inspiration in his mind, tilt his head, blow in his mouth, pump his chest. Like he was like, okay, I'll just try it. Like, because God, I believe, this is what my belief is, that God inspired him exactly what to do. And it was, I think it was Lorenzo Snow, actually, that he saved. Okay. For those of you who are members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, you'll know what that means. So it's pretty cool that he was given that inspiration. And so don't just because you've never had an experience doing something, being open to having inspiration or guidance from maybe some metaphysical sources, you'd be surprised how creative and how much we can receive if we're open to it. So that's something that I think is pretty cool. Like, yeah,
I guess part of that is, is being humble enough to receive instructions from others that maybe they know more than you. And instead of saying, I know how to do this, leave me to do it. Instead of say, how about, show me how you're doing it. I'd love to learn a different way.
Well, it's like when you first learn how to use a screwdriver, you're like, oh, wow, this makes this a lot easier. And then later you get your cordless or even a corded, screwdriver, power drill, one of those types of things. And you're like, wow, that's a lot better. But then you have to learn there's some skills in that. Otherwise you'll strip the head if you go too fast.
Exactly.
Like much pressure,
break it off or whatever. Yeah.
But using the right tool the right way can make the difference between something that works for now or something that will last for a long time. And our goal, our mission with Prepper Talk Radio is to help you, the listener, as well as ourselves, because we learn every time we do an episode, because we've got to prepare. We go through readings and we check articles and listen to podcasts and we go to classes ourselves, you guys. We go to classes ourselves. And every time we do that, we're creating greater resilience in ourselves, greater understanding, greater knowledge, and finding out, hey, whoa, I was wrong on that. And then we can share those things. So everything you're doing, listening to us, hopefully you're getting educated at the same time, learning things from us and going, hey, is that really right? And go look it up. And if we're wrong, let us know, right? We can all grow together.
Yeah.
But keep working towards a better tomorrow for you. Even though the world around you can be collapsing and falling apart and everything's ugly and nasty, you've got a chance to make your life better and to be more resilient through whatever's coming.
Yeah, I guess part of that is accepting when you're wrong, right? Being a man enough to say, and open enough to learn to say, you're absolutely right. I was completely wrong on that, or something to that matter, that equivalent. I know that, that's something that I think all of us have struggled with. At least I've struggled with it, right? Saying, I'm right, and there's not a better way, but being open to that, and it really will open your mind. I think that's part of being awake, right?
Yeah.
If you're awake, you'll accept that, hey, yeah, what's wrong? Especially when we're looking in politics and things that are happening around the world, we can form our opinions so easily, and form such strong opinions, and then it could the opposite could be entirely true.
I love the word awake. There's woke, which is picking a side and saying, "Oh, well, I'm going to fight for these purposes," without fully understanding what those purposes are, without researching all the underlying things that are attached to those purposes, right? And it's simply casting a judgment. Or there's being awake, which is studying the truth. Doesn't matter where the truth comes from, because truth is truth. And understanding you, me, and everybody else has an opportunity to learn and become a little bit wiser by knowing what the truth is. That's what awake or waking up is. And you start realizing things around you are wrong, or things you were taught in school are wrong, right? Or the things, how you were raised in your home maybe wasn't the best way, and now you're doing a different, better way for your kids, right? That's what it means. And find the truth, seek the truth. Don't be afraid of failure, and keep moving forward. Thank you guys so much for listening tonight. Thanks for being on the podcast with us. As always, this is one of my favorite nights of the week is to do podcasts with you two, and to get the feedback from everyone that's listening. Guys, please subscribe, follow us, get on our YouTube. We've got some fun things coming up here in the future. We've been doing some more videos, tutorials on our YouTube channel, but also get in our Facebook group and make sure you follow up with your knowledge as well as asking the right questions. No, there's no wrong question. All questions are right. Get them in the group, and let's all learn together.
Yep.
So until next time, keep on prepping, because this is the Get Prepared podcast. This is Ready Radio. So stay ready-minded. Stay focused on the good things. Focus through the bad times so that you can be more resilient and not just be of good use, not just be a little bit more educated, but be a tool that can help your entire community. And with that, we'll catch you guys on the next episode. Thanks for tuning in.
See you next time.
Take care, guys.